Hello, and welcome to our presentation on Spotify. Our team consists of Albert Eargun, Brad Greenberg, Crystal Wong, Stefan Mallet, and myself, Deanna Perez. Before music moved online, the public bought vinyl records, 8-tracks, and CDs. The earliest start to the online industry could be seen as the launch of the peer-to-peer music sharing website called Napster in 1999. Although this was an innovative and cheap solution to the purchasing of individual CDs, there were many issues with music piracy and breaching copyright laws. It was then that Apple created the first music streaming service in 2003, which was called iTunes. While some of the public still leaned towards illegal risky downloads on sites like LimeWire, many were drawn to the safe and reliable 99-cent song purchases of iTunes. In 2005, Pandora came up with a discovery feature allowing users to connect to new artists through their music listening preferences. It was this feature that really propelled rapid growth in the industry. Back in 2019, the market was reported having 12,831.2 million in revenues. The paid subscription services like Spotify and Pandora hold nearly 2/3 of all of those revenues. Spotify can also claim up to 32% of the total music streaming subscribers in the first quarter of 2021. Spotify was founded in 2006 by Daniel Ek and Martin Lorenz in Stockholm, Sweden. Since Spotify's launch in 2008, they have now expanded their office locations in 15 countries, including their headquarters in New York City. Spotify is more than just a music streaming service, as they host other audio streams like podcasts and audiobooks. In addition to Spotify being available on many devices, including iPhones and Androids, the company has expanded their reach and marketing potential by connecting their services with companies like Facebook and Coca-Cola. For customers, while free Spotify accounts may come with access to their large music libraries, it also comes with ad interruptions. However, a paid subscription allows the listeners the ability to download music to their account to make them less dependent on access to Wi-Fi. Spotify currently has 172 million subscribers, 381 million active monthly users, and over 70 million different tracks offered on their site. Spotify has expanded their reach throughout the globe and is currently available in 184 markets. While Spotify is one of the largest players in the music streaming service industry today, there are many other market opportunities left for them to explore. Now I'd like to pass it over to my colleague, Crystal Wong, who will discuss one of these countries for possible market entry opportunities.
Thanks, Deanna. So for North Korea, we can take a quick look at their market size and demographics. Their population is about 25 million, and of that, 44% are 25 to 54-year-old, and 15 are in the 15 to 24-year range. So about more than half the population are in the labor workforce and old enough to purchase goods and services. However, the country does have low GDP and economic freedom, so consumers wouldn't be interested in something that is not a necessity. They do not have any independent media, and the government controls all radio and TV stations. And in 2018, they did unveil a Wi-Fi service in Pyongyang, the largest city and capital. But the pandemic had a significant impact on the production and progress of it. So with the strict border closures, their markets have really suffered shortages and volatility. So everything is still very limited. The outlook for North Korea is, although there can be possible consumers, it would be very weak growth over time and low interest. There is a high level of cost since they do not have the capability in-house to support these digital services, and it would just ultimately be a high risk for Spotify. So looking further, North Korea is a totalitarian government. They have low economic freedom and high corruption. The government sets restrictions and censorship, and they strongly believe in the Jewish ideology. All art forms are didactic, so you have, it must serve a purpose and have a moral instruction. It would be very difficult for Spotify to enter this market, as unless it only promotes North Korean artists or government preferences. There is interest for outside influences, but it would have to be through illegal distribution channels, which can't be done. So if Spotify did look for some type of collaboration or joint venture with North Korea, it would bring the country extra income, from the enterprise and their business, but it would be entirely dependent on the government's decision and their control. So up next, Brad will be going over Somalia.
Thank you so much, Crystal. A second country we evaluated is Somalia. Somalia is located on the eastern coast of Africa, located on the Horn of Africa. And as we look to the demographics and market factors, we see some positives of a population of 16 million, half of the country being under the age of 15. And if we look to the graph, we see mobile cellular subscriptions have exploded over the past decade, over 50%. But if we really look at the other side of the coin, we see that individuals using the internet as a percentage of population is under 2%. And that's a huge concern for us, especially for Spotify, as internet and broadband connections across the country are going to be crucial for the company to exist and to have a customer base in the country. Other indicators that are not so bright is PPP income of under $900. Even though we've seen growth over the past decade, it's still one of the lowest in Africa. And if we look to government and politics and culture, we see some other positives of a federal parliamentary republic, which is similar to that of Austria or Germany. But the fact of the matter, and as we see in the news, is that there are extremists that have huge swaths and control of the country, and they are deterring political advancement, which would lead to globalization, free trade, and allow for Spotify to enter the country. And it's also hindering cultural to sprout. And what we see is that while radio is the biggest medium in the country, extremists have made an effort to get rid of music that gets played throughout the country. But despite the conflict, we've seen music rise through the country and seen artists like Kanon sprout up and play and become global sensations. For example, his song was the theme song of the World Cup in 2010, one of the biggest sporting events in the world. And now if we take a step back, we can say, okay, now that we've discussed North Korea, we've discussed Somalia, we look at the metrics and indexes and we scale them on 1 to 5, we see the scores are relatively low. Now, there are 2 other countries that we will evaluate shortly that ultimately we believe would be the next markets for Spotify to enter, China and Cuba. And now I'll hand it off to my colleague Alper to begin discussions on China.
China is the largest economy by GDP at the purchasing power parity and the second largest economy by nominal GDP. China is currently governed as a unitary one-party socialist republic by Chinese Communist Party. The country's music industry grew 16% at 2019 with a market size of 590 million. And the digital music business increased by 5% since 2017 with the number of users exceeding the 550 million. It also has the world's largest internet and broadband users, with over 800 million internet users, equivalent to the 60% of their population. Almost all of them are being mobile. And also, China had more than 1 billion 4G users, accounting to 40% of the world's total. Also, China is making rapid advances in 5G technology. Chinese Communist Party General Secretary Xi has ruled since 2012 and has pursued large-scale efforts to reform the Chinese economy, which has suffered from structural instabilities and slowing growth, and also reformed the one-child policy, penal system, as well as instituting a vast anti-corruption crackdown. Being one-party state gives China the authority to enforce any restrictions and censorship as they see fit, so the foreign participant entering to the market will need to go through an approval process. Current streaming market structure in China doesn't support the Spotify's free subscription model to monetize music consumption. Most streaming services are free and used to drive traffic for ticket sales and other special expense content for consumers, which also created a freemium culture for streaming businesses and consumers. Now I would like to pass to Stefan for his presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Alper. Now we get to our 4th and final country for review, Cuba. One of the most populous countries in the Caribbean, the Spanish-speaking Cuba has roughly 11 million residents. Primarily an exporter, Cuba's centrally managed communist government has begun to open its markets slowly to private businesses as long chilly relations with the US and Western countries begin to thaw. The Cuban market is comprised of roughly 7.5 million residents between the ages of 15 and 64, Spotify's primary target audience. The most recent estimate of GDP per capita is over $12,000 per year, according to 2016 numbers, and is on the rise. Specific to Spotify's interests, although internet and mobile phone usage are some of the lowest in the region, Both forms of infrastructure have seen increased interest in development from the government as a result of the recent COVID-19 pandemic and the need for their workforce to work remotely. This bodes well for any internet-based company able to take advantage of the emerging market. Although the form of the Cuban government remains the same, current President Miguel Diaz-Canel has indicated a willingness to accelerate measures toward opening to more privately owned businesses. This comes with the caveat that the government retains the right to take over any business should it deem the action in the national interest. Fortunately for intellectual property-based businesses, Cuba is a signatory of most major IP treaties, suggesting a willingness to enforce owners' rights within its borders. From the cultural perspective, Cuba has a long history of music as part of daily life and many artists originating from the island who have achieved global success. This makes for an obvious entry point for a music-based company to provide a service consumers desire. At the same time, the Cuban population is famously well educated due to widespread availability of state-run schools. Spotify would be able to rely on a competent workforce should it decide to open a subsidiary in the country. As our research conclusions suggest, Cuba and China are the two countries we have selected for Spotify to expand into. Important in both strategies is to focus on building strong relationships with each country's government, highlighting local and homegrown but global artists, and riding the wave of internet availability expansion. Individually, both countries have some specific issues as well. In China, it is important to consider how culture and technology differ across its different provinces, and to expand Spotify's current relationship with Tencent. In Cuba, Spotify should also focus on building a local subsidiary company to leverage the country's better than average workforce and stay in the government's good graces. This presentation, alongside the attached written report, tells why Spotify should work to move into these two countries in the future and how they can do so successfully. From my team, Alper, Deanna, Brad, Crystal, and I, thanks for watching.